So instead of violating the curfew and going out, you brought all the trouble to the house.
She's admitted to using cocaine, is alleged to have been drinking at a house party.
Teens are known to be a little more reckless, impulsive, and unaware of the consequences of their actions. But there's a long way between that and getting 2 people murdered in the span of 4 months. This is Alexis Rogers. In 2018, she was driving her mother's car when she decided to pursue another teenager and kill him. Then she convinced her judge to release her and threw a party where another teen was murdered. Was substance abuse or her terrifying personality at play? Her defense continues to be outrageous, while the justice system is trying to decide whether Alexis was at the wrong place at the wrong time twice, or if she's a menace and a downright nasty person. Trigger warning, today we'll be discussing the themes of illegal substances, violence, and the death of minors. If this is not something you can handle, this is your chance to turn back. This is the full story of Alexis Rogers and the 2 murder cases she's involved in. Alexis Rogers was born in 1999 and grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Not much is known about her family or her background, but by the time she was 19 years old, she already had an addiction and anger problems. In the late evening of March 20th, 2018, she was driving her mother's black Mercedes with her friend Damian Luna. They were speeding up down Coors Boulevard, enjoying a fun night ride. But when the driver of a Dodge Challenger made a left turn in front of them, then changed his mind and returned to Coors Boulevard, Alexis had nothing short of a tantrum. She started yelling, cursing, and pursuing the Challenger. What was she trying to achieve? Then there was an exchange between Alexis and Damian. Then Damian pulled out a gun and shot the Challenger's driver. 16-year-old Efrain Arzate lost his life that night. He never knew Alexis and Damian, and they didn't know him. In many ways, he wasn't different from them, a teenager enjoying a night ride through town. That night, Alexis and Damian realized they'd made a huge mistake. So Alexis sped up as fast as she could and drove off to Texas. Then they headed to Nevada, and finally they arrived in Colorado. Back in Albuquerque, they were wanted fugitives, but they were having the time of their lives on the run. I guess it can be quite exciting, but not when you've killed someone. Eventually, the 2 friends were arrested. Damian wasn't happy about it. He knew he would go to prison for a long time. How do you get out of killing someone in a road rage incident? He was sentenced to a minimum of 15 years in prison. But Alexis, on the other hand, well, she just couldn't accept responsibility of Efrain's murder.
Got a glimpse into what kind of defense a 19-year-old woman might use in her road rage murder case. That is that she was allegedly a victim.
When Alexis went into the courtroom, she was nothing but tears. But her crying wasn't for Efrain. She was crying for herself at the thought of losing her precious freedom. She cried throughout her whole hearing, which was meant to determine whether she would stay in prison or be released until her trial. She was adamant she was innocent. Why should she go to prison if she wasn't the one who pulled the trigger? But why did she go on the run with Damian afterward? When the judge asked Alexis why she didn't come forward to the police right after the shooting, she claimed she was also a victim of Damian's.
She was scared of Damian. He had been beating her. That's about it.
Was this true at all? Or was she pulling a victim stunt to get out of trouble? After all, she had her phone with her. She could have called 911 anytime when Damian wasn't looking. They were on the run in 3 different states, 4 if you count New Mexico too. Alexis had a long time to think about her actions, but it didn't seem like she ever changed her mind. And when it all failed, Alexis told the judge she was actually high on Xanax during the road rage incident, almost as if she was a victim of the anti-anxiety medication too. There are several side effects to Xanax, but rage, impulsiveness, and violence are not there. If anything, Xanax tones down these urges and can lead to drowsiness, sleepiness, and forgetfulness. So it's unclear whether Alexis was telling the truth and if Xanax really did have an effect on her decision to chase Efrain. When she was arrested, Alexis already had a record for speeding up and driving without a license. But after the defense team made their statement, the judge felt merciful towards Alexis. She was released until her trial on a $150,000 bond and ordered to complete an addiction treatment program. Alexis was also ordered not to consume alcohol or drugs, and the judge set a curfew, prohibiting her from leaving home between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. But none of this would matter to Alexis.
Albuquerque woman has taken a plea deal for her role in a deadly road rage shooting. Alexis Rogers was driving in the South Valley last year when her passenger, Damian Luna, shot at another car and killed 16-year-old Efren Azarte.
It seemed like Alexis was ready to face the consequences of her actions. She pled guilty to harboring a felon and conspiracy to commit harboring.
This defendant did knowingly assist him in remaining a fugitive, including providing a vehicle, driving, financial assistance.
Alexis was told she would probably go to prison for 3 years, but she didn't take this too well. In July 2018, just 4 months after Efren's murder, Alexis made the headlines again.
Today, a judge said that she may not be the one pulling the trigger, but twice now she's been there when someone was killed.
Indeed, Alexis was on her curfew when she decided to throw a massive house party. 100 guests were there, many of them underage. There was heavy drinking and snorting, pretty much every form of powder available.
A month and a half, she's admitted to using cocaine, is alleged to have been drinking at a house party.
The party had been going on for many hours when someone pulled a gun, and 21-year-old Eduardo Lerma was shot and killed on the spot. Michael Patrick, a spokesman for the district attorney office, said, Alexis Rogers was allowed back into our community, where within weeks she tests positive for cocaine, and ultimately a homicide takes place in her driveway during a party at her residence. That night, she violated her no substance court order and found a nasty loophole to her night curfew.
Violating the curfew and going out, you brought all the trouble to the house.
You're on a very tight leash.
But here's the catch. Once again, she was completely unwilling to take any responsibility for the incident. Once again, she told the judge she wasn't the one pulling the trigger. Her defense attorney even painted her as a victim, saying she was trying to end the party when the worst happened.
Rogers was actually trying to end the party, and she was trying to get people to leave the home.
According to Alexis's lawyer, she simply couldn't get the shooter to leave. When he became enraged, he threatened to shoot Alexis. And that's when her friend Eduardo stepped in. He put himself in between Alexis and the shooter, and sadly he was fatally wounded.
The victim in this case, he actually stepped forward and was trying to protect Ms. Rogers from being killed herself when he was tragically shot.
Her lawyer pointed out that Alexis was also beaten up pretty badly. Her face was swollen and she was admitted to the hospital on the night of the party. But here's what the first responder says.
Officers arrived at the scene and found her in her bedroom, intoxicated, sleeping, passed out in the bed.
On the other hand, her defense attorney says she was passed out from the beating on the street when the police came.
She was laying on the street unconscious when the shooting happened. She was a victim herself. She was seriously injured.
The fact that she was beaten up is quite clear, but whether this was before or after the shooting and whether she was trying to end the party are definitely unclear. Why did the lawyer say she was on the street if the officer remembers her intoxicated on her bed? Is the lawyer trying to cover up that she was violating her court order not to consume illegal substances and alcohol? The prosecution painted a different picture. Alexis is alleged to have consumed large quantities of alcohol during this party and to have instigated multiple fights throughout the night. Ultimately, at some point during the party, one of the guests was shot and killed. The prosecutor wanted the judge to see that Alexis is simply a danger to the community, that she doesn't care about getting her life on track or respecting the laws, and that this wouldn't stop until she would be held in prison. She is technically not pulling the trigger in either of the two incidents that led to death, but the defendant's actions are leaving behind her a wake of death and destruction. That is clear. The prosecution's harsh words worked. State District Judge Cindy Leos had Alexis taken into custody at the end of the hearing, and she is now being held without bond. My feeling is you're going to continue putting yourself in situations which result in someone being harmed or killed. The wheels of justice move slow, but it's likely Alexis will have to spend a pretty long time in jail, much longer than she is willing to accept. But perhaps this is what she needs to change as a person and fix her substance issues. Alexis Rogers' case is a strange one. She didn't kill these people, but she was awfully close to both cases. She was the one who drove her car and chased Efrain down the boulevard, and she was the one who threw the party that she claims got out of control. How culpable is she? How long will her sentence be? And will she ever accept responsibility for her actions? Or will she continue to play the victim role to get a lighter sentence?